Peace and blessings, everyone. It's your favorite truth seeker and truth teller back with another video. I'm not going to get into, what my channel is any longer. There are my past videos, but mental health is one of the things I like to discuss. And today I want to discuss, being an empath and how that affects someone that has dealt with a massive amount of trauma and dealing with loss and striving to cope with that in a increasingly chaotic world. An empathic person is a person that sees others going through struggles or trials and tribulations, and they automatically can relate to or take on that person's feelings um, of what they're going through. Me, it starts with being empathic. Starts with I know what it's like to have to go through struggles, to have to cope with loss, to be extremely lonely, to having needed something or needed things and not having those things. And I'm not talking about monetarily. I mean, I'm not rich or anything, but I'm not broke. I can pay my bills. I've have had some struggle with bills, before, but mostly for the most part of my life, I've been able to stay afloat. But what I mean by loss or not being able to have what you need, I mean support or simple basic things like a conversation. Someone you can talk to when you need somebody to talk to, or someone that can support you when you need that support because you're at a low place. These are things I've never had, but I'm an empath, so I can be driving down the street and I can see somebody, let's say that's struggling to walk, and I can look at them and see them struggling, and I automatically take on their feeling. I feel so horrible. This has led me in life into a lot of things that people might consider to be odd. There was one time I was driving to the food store, I think it was, and it was like 10 degrees outside. And there was a guy walking down the street, and all he had on was like a windbreaker. And it was windy out. And I drove past, and when I drove past, I felt so bad I had to turn back around and just pick him up and give him a ride to wherever he was going, because it was freezing, and I could imagine how he felt. Or there's the person that when I go into the food store, there was a lady one day. She said, "Excuse me, sir. You mind getting me some food? Me and my children are hungry. I'm going to the food." And I felt so bad. I looked at this lady, and she was emaciated, and the kids were fed. That you could tell they ate, but she looked like she wasn't eating at all. And so I went to the food store. I got her some food to eat, and I got like $20 out of you know cash back, and I gave her the $20 because I would have went home and I would have felt absolutely horrible. I'm the type of person that will sit back and I will let these things sit in my mind, like, oh my goodness, why didn't I help that person? Why didn't I help that person? And I know you can't save everyone, but I don't know, if it seems like I have to. I have to, because I don't want people to feel and go to the dark places that I've gone through. Because I mean, I've been told that by other people that a lot of what I've gone through, a lot of people said they wouldn't have made it. And they think that I'm a very resilient person. Now, I never thought of myself as being a resilient person, but I guess I might be. I don't know. I let others judge that. But it's very difficult. I can see things online, and I'll see situations where there'll be a family and their family members died in an accident or a fire, and I'll see they'll have a GoFundMe. I don't know these people campaign. I'll give what I have, give what I can. And it gets difficult at times because it's like you're looking at these people, and they're struggling, and you can identify with it so strongly that you feel like you have to get up and do something that no one else did for me. I'll never forget when my daughter passed away. It was a lot of support there during that time. People came and they brought me food and they can come by past the house and visit. After the funeral was over, all that stops. People that told me that they would still be there and come and check up on me or call and check me out. I never heard from any of them people ever again. Very few people, very few, like maybe one or two. And that was difficult. And then when I went down with my surgeries, I had two hip replacement surgeries. And when I went down with my hip replacement surgeries, uh, each time I came back home on a walker, and I had no help at all. You know, I had to try and take care of myself with a walker. Cook, clean, go to the store. I never forget after my second surgery, um, I didn't have anybody to come pick me up from the hospital. The entire time I was in the hospital, I never received one visitor. I was in the hospital for a month. I didn't receive not one visitor the whole time. And when it was time for me to come home, I didn't have anybody to bring me home, so I had to call the Medicaid van, and they came and brought me home. And when I came home, I didn't have anybody to help me bring my bags inside. So I literally had to sit in the parking lot, standing up with my walker, and wait until somebody pulled up with their car and ask them to bring my bags inside for me because I didn't have anybody to help. And I say that to say that even though I've been through these things and I've had so many people turn their back on me when I ask for help and I really genuinely need it, I don't want other people to experience that because I've gone to some deep, dark places, feeling like there was something wrong with me, and I feel like I was being a burden. That's why to this day I really don't like to ask people for things, or if I know if I need help and they're asking if they can help. A lot of the time, even though I might need it, I'll say no because I don't want to become that much of a burden to where I'm getting abandoned again. Because that's what it feels like that happened to me. Like I was abandoned because I was in need. Whether that need be, help me clean and cook or something, or that need be just someone that I can unload my feelings off to. It felt like I was a burden to other people. Um, and so I try to take that energy and give to others when I can. I'm not a church person. I don't go to church. I'm not a Christian or anything like that. I used to go to church every Sunday with my parents. I never forget Reverend Harris was his name. He would always say, sometime during his sermon, or either it was at the end when church was about to be over, he would always say, "It's better to give than to receive," and that's something that really stuck with me throughout my years. So I've always strived to be a person that tried to give more than I took. You know, even when I don't have. It's been plenty of times like I've seen people that I don't even know, and I see their struggle, their need. I know I got food in the house. I know I got gasoline in the car. I only got a few dollars, and I'll give them, what little bit of money I have. Because I know that money is going to come. I'm not, I'm not going to die without that little bit of money, but I know they need it more than I do. And this is the struggle of being an empath. Afterwards, sometimes I can even say, it seems like that person may be scamming me. And I'll say to myself, but, if they are, that's not on me. I give out of the kindness of my heart. If it's in them to want to scam other people because they're too lazy or don't want to do what they need to do to take care of themselves, then that's on them. My conscience is clear. But I get that giving spirit really from my father. He's a very giving person. So with that being said, with the empathic abilities that I have, I just take on people's feelings, especially with children. Little girls. you know, it's so funny. A little girl, like when I was teaching school, little girls, they could get over on anything with me. They could just call my name and they could make that face, and it would melt my heart every single time. I would just have to give them whatever it is they wanted. If they were acting up in class, I let them get away with it. If they needed pencils, knowing I had told them they should have came to school with pencils and they would get in trouble if they didn't, I gave them pencils. And the boys too, but more so the girls. And I guess maybe that was the reason why I was so close to my daughter, because I'm a girl dad, but I've always taken on those feelings. And it's difficult in the field that I work in. And it's one of the reasons why I got burnt out working juvenile detention, because I would work juvenile detention and I would have these kids come in there, and some of them would be there for a year or even maybe a little more. And I was spending more time with them than I was with anybody else because I was working. And I was spending more time with them than their actual families did. So I got to know these kids, and I started caring for them. And then so a lot of these kids would go away and they're never coming home from prison. They went straight from detention to never coming home ever again. I looked at my boy the other day, um, that I had when he was 16 years old. This was about 2000 and I want to say 4 or 5. He was 16 back then. I looked him up. He's still in prison right now. His release date is like 2040 or something like that. It's sad to see a young life, just go. And he's physically still living, but in the belly of the beast, he's not living anymore. That's not living. That's just existing. And who knows what the type of charges he had, what type of abuse he has faced in all that time. And that would really, really burn my soul, that I would see these kids, and when they weren't in the environment where they were constantly bombarded with negativity, just seeing them in their rawest form, and seeing how likable they were and how, they're not actually bad people. And some of them were dead, some of them were murdered, some died from other means, but, that it really, really bothered me to see that. I couldn't stand it. So I was really glad that I got the job as a teacher when I did, because I was taking on too much energy from other people and taking on too much energy. And then even still with teaching, I had kids that working in Title I school. I had kids that would come to school every day, and I was teaching in elementary school, and they were taking care of their younger siblings because their parents were on drugs or alcoholics, wherever it may be, and they were the only responsible in the house to see that the rest of their younger siblings ate or were taken care of before they went to school. And I take on those feelings. I love teaching so much. There was a little girl, I'll never forget. Her mother was a teacher at the school too. She came up to me one day and said, "Mr. Wise, Mr. Wise, Mr. Wise." She said, "My granddaddy passed away. You my new granddaddy." Oh my goodness, I love that type of stuff. Made me feel so good and warm inside when she did that. And then there was another little girl. She was walking to school one day, and she picked a flower and she gave it to me. She gave it to me, said it was for me. I mean, just being around those kids was just life. And I actually reached out to her not too long ago on Facebook. I thought about it. I reached out to her, and she's an adult now. She has a family of her own, and it was great to see that. And I see kids all the time that I used to work with, like at the gas station or at the car wash, wherever it may be, and they remember me, and that makes me feel good because it lets me know I did something good in the world. You know, uh, but like back to being empathic, I 100% take on those feelings of other people all the time, and it gets difficult, especially when you're dealing with your own mental health issues and your own trauma and loss. But I don't want to ramble on for too long. Again, my name is Wise Champion. If you found any value in this video, please like, share, subscribe. And I'd like to build with some other people on this topic, or let's get a conversation started where as we can express our with mental health, understand that we're not dealing with this alone. And I think a lot of the stuff that we see negatively going in our community can start to be fixed through our constant and concerted effort with each other to be better. Peace and blessings.